What's going on, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com at Occupy Fantasy on YouTube, Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok, any social media platform that you spend your hours a day on. We are probably on it in some form or capacity. I am your host, Moose, at CFB underscore Moose on Twitter. It's where you can find me. Co founder and data guru here at OccupyFantasy.com. I do have a new microphone, and so I hope it works better than the last couple of microphones that we've tried on this show. So if you're here and you like the microphone, say yes. If you don't, say it still sucks. But I'm the host alongside Brian at Brian Jester FF on Twitter is where you can find him. He's the co-founder and CEO of OccupyFantasy.com. Brian, how's it going?
What's up, Moose? It's been quite the day. We're doing this now at 9 p.m. Eastern to see what kind of audience we draw in, but super excited to talk week 4 NFL with you. What's up?
Absolutely fantastic in the sense that I was out at the bars and you texted me, hey, we have a show in 15 minutes. I said, oh, well, let me get back home. So it's going to be a fun show tonight. I will say that. So, what is this show? This is Beyond the Model. We do have our Occupy model up on the website at occupyfantasy.com. We have the daily plug up written by our NFL writers. We also have our free video that was posted with our best plays. This show just overall general Q&A, fantasy football, DFS, prop bets. If you're one of the 6 people left in any survivor pool combined uh, after the onslaughts the first couple of weeks, we're here to talk about that as well. And just kind of, some overall strategy, some high level thoughts, pick each other's brains, answer your guys' questions first and foremost. So, Brian, we have a handful of questions here. Let's get right to it. First question here from Jose Morales. He says, I am playing on DraftKings in the early only contest. Do you think that Justin Fields is the best quarterback for that contest?
I think he'll be the highest owned. I think probably one of the stacks are better quarterbacks, though, assuming you're playing a really large contest.
Yes, and with that, I haven't played too much early only contests, but my thought would be the smaller number of games, the more you need to worry about ownership as compared to the actual projections. And so it seems kind of tough to play one of the highest owned quarterbacks on an early only slate for me.
Yeah, and Fields is 5,500 for some reason on DraftKings. It gets a lot of situational and injury bumps as well. So he's a good play in general. And again, he will be popular. You look at, I think Burrow will be popular too. Is that also on the 1 p.m. games? Let me see. Cincinnati and Carolina is
They are also 1 p.m. Yeah.
okay. So I think Burrow will be up there as well. And we do like that game stack a little better as far as our stack rankings go. But Fields is a good alternative too.
Yeah, definitely. And so up here next, EGS Comics, who says my mic sounds much better. So I appreciate that. He says, what's your
Very nice.
thoughts on a Green Bay stack if Love is playing?
Yeah, so we got the tweet from Adam Schefter today because none of the Green Bay beat reporters actually have any inside information. The national reporters have that access. And Jordan Love is expected to play. They did not elevate Sean Clifford from the practice squad, their quarterback. So very clear that he's going to start tomorrow. Welcome news for all of the positional players for Green Bay, particularly their pass catchers. Malik Willis has played great, just not a high volume passing offense when he's subbed in for Jordan Love. All that being said, great game environment. Obviously, Minnesota's a very tough defense. I stacked Houston last week thinking it was a great game environment because of Minnesota's offense. But Brian Flores has been putting opposing offenses in hell. Can Green Bay handle that pressure? It's a great game environment. I think it's a great high-risk stack. Right now, we have Jordan Love projected for 3% projected ownership. I can't imagine his pass catchers get much more than that. On the flip side, and I think I actually like the Minnesota side more here because Green Bay is actually missing their top 2 corners, Valentine and likely Jair Alexander, based on the practice squad elevation. So you get Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, who is back, with Sam Darnold, who's been maybe the MVP of the league since, which is crazy to say, against 2 backup corners in a great game environment. I do like the Minnesota side, but yes, Jordan Love always in play with the plethora of pass catchers that he has.
Yeah, if you want to bring that back, most of those pass catchers are going to be 1 to 5% owned at the most. Jaden Reed's going to be a little bit higher on FanDuel. Just I think he's a little bit cheaper over there. But yeah, great game environment there. And it kind of reaches to a higher level for this week, Brian, is the fact that there's a bunch of injuries in every single game. Way too much to go through in this video, in this live stream. But if you have specific questions about things, we'll go ahead and ask. I will say, if you are part of the Occupy Fantasy Discord, go ahead and check Brian's message that he pinned about 5 minutes before the show started, listing all the injuries and everything before this just show started. And I
Dude, my hands
know
are cramping. That shit was crazy. It's extensive. It was such a long list.
anytime I see injury report 1/X, I'm like, oh, this is not
I
a good.
know.
This is not good. Yep.
I mean,
And
it's not good.
yeah,
It's not good for me collecting and putting all the information together, but it could be great for our edges tomorrow, whether it's in season long or DFS.
yep. Courtney is in the chat. He says, "What's up, guys? What's up, Courtney? Glad to have you on stream here." And then Scranton Steve, which is a fantastic username,
What's up,
says, "What
Steve?
about a Minshew Myers Bauer stack?"
Yeah, so that's extremely interesting. So let's talk about the injuries in that game. And again, if you guys have questions about season long, about prop bets, Survivor, we will also get to those as well. Right now, it's a lot of DFS questions, so we'll continue with the DFS theme here. If you look at the injuries in that game, and it was kind of crazy because the injuries on the Raiders side, they looked like any team's injury report would look on Thursday or after Thursday's practice. Like, oh, some guys are questionable, some limited, veterans haven't practiced. I'm sure they'll be fine. And then Antonio Pierce comes out on Friday. He's like, oh, yeah, by the way, Devontae Adams is out. Michael Mayer is out. Our offensive tackle's out. Max Crosby's out. We have 2 other defenders out. So we have 3 defenders out, including the best pass rusher in the entire league. They have their offensive tackle out. They have one of the best receivers in the league out, and they have their number 2 tight end out. So yes, if we look at just who benefits from those absences, yes, Brock Bauer should get a ton of targets. Jacoby Myers should get a ton of targets. The question is, can their defense stay off the field? Can their offense stay on the field with the tackle missing and without Devontae Adams? So it's one of those situations. Moose, how do you feel about that? Because yes, the target shares and the funnels are condensed, but the entire state of the offense doesn't look that great after all those injuries.
It's tough because as I'm looking here at ownership, you see Brock Bowers 10 to 20%. Some of the wide receivers on there, 10 to 12% up on the upper limit. It seems kind of tough, right? You have a shaky team like that. It seems hard for me to pull the trigger on such highly owned guys. If they're single digits, low single digits, I'm way more comfortable pulling the trigger on that. But it's like I have to be right and even more right on my other parts. So when they're that high owned. So that's a game environment that I'm actually fading, not looking too much. Maybe I take a piece here and there, but not something that I'm actively considering.
Agree.
Let's see. Up here next from JPT says DraftKings main slate. Which low owned wide receiver will break the main slate?
It's a great question. And we actually have a couple questions following about Cortland Sutton, who was the cover boy of this video. No one's playing Cortland Sutton this week. He is literally 1% projected ownership on DraftKings. Will he break the slate? I'm not sure because it is a tough matchup, as the people in the chat are rightfully alluding to. Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, obviously one of the tougher cornerback duos in the league. This, however, is the beginning, as you may have heard in Thursday's video. If you've read the daily plug already, this is the beginning of underperforming wide receiver season. Once we get 3 weeks on the books, we look at receivers' opportunities over the last 3 weeks, rolling, and guys who have underperformed their opportunity generally blow up at a really high rate in that 4th week. And we have a list of guys. Obviously, did not work out with Brandon Cooks. Let's just put that out there. This is not going to have a 100% hit rate. Nothing has a 100% hit rate. However, if we can get guys that are due to blow up at 1% ownership at lower price tags, Sutton is now $5,300. Yes, it's a tough matchup, but his opportunity says he should be a lot higher priced and a lot higher owned. So all that being said, great high risk play. You're probably not playing him in smaller contests. You're not playing him in low risk, but you're playing 150 max, you're playing 20 max, or you're using that as your differentiation in your high risk lineup. I think Sutton's a guy that certainly fits the bill. And Moose, I see he's all the way up at number 4 in the model this week.
Yeah, that's the thing with these underperforming wide receivers. At least I think you can even play him in more than just high risk. The model's really good at picking up for the underperforming wide receivers. And so, on the more the high risk plays, you see him in the top 20 or so. You're like, oh, he made a dent in the model. I can see him. I don't have to scroll down. But when you see him in the top 10, top 5, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I need to think a little bit more about why he's up there, not just from the underperforming wide receiver. What are some of the back end metrics of the model, some of the matchups, some of the other what else is going on that's making him go up to top 5? Because the underperforming wide receiver by itself isn't going to get you in the top 5, top 10 spot. So there's definitely some underlying metrics there the model's picking up on to get him there. So that's someone that I actually like in all contest types.
Fair enough. Yeah, top 4 in the model is not easy to come by in a week with 12, 13 games. So yeah, totally agree there.
Exactly. Ed, totally not the FBI, says I'm one of 67 left in my $1,400 or 1,400 plus entry survivor. Yes, absolutely love it. And he said, I'm going with the Niners this week. Brian, do you have any notes or anything about Survivor this week? I kind of just like threw my computer out the window when all 20 entries lost.
I would say if you made it this far, you should continue to do whatever the hell you've been doing because it's been extremely profitable. Because literally the top four outside of the Jets last week it, lost. A lot of top four most popular and highest money lines. This week, San Francisco has the highest money line, highest ownership, but also it is the best week to use them according to future schedule. So I'm not going to argue with anyone who takes the 49ers.
Exactly. Yep. We have a thing here from Byron Williams. He says, when attacking single entry, do you eat a lot of the chalk or try and find more leverage? And Brian, I think you and I differ a little bit, but we have the same kind of strategy. At least for me, there's some chalk. As smaller and smaller field, there's just certain chalk you have to eat, and then maybe you get different one or two other ways. What do you think?
Yeah, the first couple of weeks is tough, right? We don't have a ton of injuries to deal with. We don't have any underperforming options. The pricing is super loose the first 3 weeks, whether that's on purpose, and I think it is on purpose by the sites. But as it gets tighter, ownership condenses more, and there's very easy ways to get leverage. And so I think you play a low-owned game stack. That is one way, or you end up with like 3 or 4 players under 20%, maybe 2 under 10%, 1 under 5%. The larger the contest goes, so you can't really eat chalk, right? Because you have one lineup amongst a bunch of people. How are you going to win that if you have the same group of players as everyone else does? So if you think about it that way, it's a pretty simple answer that you want to get leverage in multiple spots, and the larger the contest, the more leverage you want to gain throughout those spots.
Okay. And next question here we have from Courtney. He says, how many low owned plays do you need in a large field single entry?
Yeah, 4, at least 4, I would say.
Cool. Conscious Machine says, would you pick Love over Fields? And I think we picked this up on the earlier question uh, over on the early slate. But if you're doing the main slate, does your thoughts still apply?
Yeah, I still think it's Fields. If you're playing, if this is a season long question, I'm just looking at projections now. Fields, we have, let's see, like roughly 18 fantasy points. Jordan Love against that Minnesota defense that's been so great so far, got him for 17 points. Plus, we don't know how his knee's going to react. I would say Fields gets the slight nod for me.
Okay. And testimonial here from PY23. We did not pay him to say this, but he says, hashtag part of the process. Big thanks to Occupy Fantasy. I've been watching YouTube content for years in all caps. So
PY,
appreciate the
appreciate that.
love. PY, keep it going. And for anyone else who's here, if you're new, you can say hello or don't. We don't judge either way. If you do like
Up
the
to you.
video and you want to see some more of it, go ahead and hit subscribe, hit the like button. We do also have a Discord as well that you can check out, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. But Scranton Steve has a question here. It's a season long question. I have Brees Hall, Braylon Allen, or Jerome Ford.
Yeah, it doesn't matter too much who you have. Like maybe if there's a quarterback receiver connection, then I'll start to consider correlation or anti-correlation a little more. Either way, I think Ford projects a little bit better than Braylon Allen does. I'll take the lead back over a number 2 back almost any time. And Allen has been running really hot as far as touchdowns go and production goes. He's really good, but he's also been running hot in terms of variance. So I'll say Ford gets the nod for me there.
Okay. And Nick Bass says, take a risk on Nico or be safe with Diggs. And for me, Brian Collins, Nico is at number 2 in the model. Super high ownership. What's your thought on this?
Yeah, so I think the question being a risk is his hamstring injury. He tweaked it in practice or something, came back Friday. All reports indicate he's good to go. I don't even think they called up a receiver from the practice squad despite Tank Dell being out. So all reports, all signs point to Nico being fine and the number 1 receiver. Diggs will get a little bit of a bump, obviously, with Dell out, but also he gets a bump because Jacksonville is missing their starting slot corner once again. But it's not really a risk, right? I think maybe the risk, I don't know, the risk is actually rostering Nico because Nico is 22 to 29% projected ownership on DraftKings and FanDuel. Diggs just 15%. So Diggs actually ranks top 7, top 8 in the model and actually has the ownership leverage over Nico. So despite who asked the question here, Moose? It was Nick. Despite Nico being a little risky with his injury, he's actually going to be one of the most popular receivers in DFS this weekend.
And for me, it sounds like if you put yourself in a vacuum, you're like, oh, the guy who had an injury is more expensive and more popular versus the guy who I think, at least in my opinion, has a higher ceiling, lower price, lower owned. I think for me that sounds better. Um, let's see. DV says full PPR start two. Brian Thomas, Bruce Allen, Bruce Irving, and or Josh Downs.
Fuck is Bruce Allen? Isn't that the former GM? Bruce
Yeah.
Irving? DVC, I know. Okay, I'm gonna take a guess here. I assume you mean Braylon Allen and
Yeah.
Bucky Irving. But first, I'm
Yeah.
make up first names. I like that game a lot better. Brian Thomas. Let me see. I'm just looking here. Uh, Bruce Irving, by the way, is a much better name. Bucky Irving's dealing with a hamstring injury. Not sure I would play him. Braylon Allen, we just talked about. Let me see here. I'm thinking here. I would definitely start Thomas, and then it's between Downs and Allen for me. And I think I would go. Braylon Allen. So I'll go Braylon Allen and Brian Thomas.
Okay. And my buddy Charlie, thanks for being my buddy Charlie. He says, "What's the deal with Travis Kelsey? Is he due for a huge game this week?" And
Bro,
EGS follows up, says, "If you had an underperforming tight end list, Kelsey should be on it." And Brian, Kelsey is the number one wide receiver tight end in our model. Are you trusting the model or are you fading it? What's your thought on Kelsey this week?
bro, he's so cooked. But the model's like, hey, don't shut that door on Kelsey just yet. And he can't be underperforming because he's not even getting opportunities. Underperforming metrics are when guys are getting opportunities but not capitalizing and converting those. He's not even getting those. He's out there blocking, running routes, and just looking sad on the sidelines. However, they're missing Derwin James this week, the opposing Los Angeles Chargers. They're missing Joey Bosa. The Chargers are dealing with a lot of injuries. If there is a get right spot, it's Kelsey. And if Kelsey does not go off as the number one tight end in the model this week, given the situations, then he is officially 100% cooked. So let's give him one more week. This is the week that Kelsey goes off. Hopefully we can clip this and put it on social media later.
Exactly. If not, he'll be yeah, it'll be like, when you're scrolling on TikTok and you're like, "Oh yeah, here's the guys in NFL that I really wish were still playing when I grew up." And you're like, "Oh man, yeah, NFL's over
Kelsey.
now." Yep. He's done. Let's see. Travis says, "Any love for Caleb Williams? Rams giving up fourth most DK points to quarterbacks."
Yeah, we generally don't look at matchups like that just because, there's so much variance, especially in the first couple of weeks of the season. But Caleb Williams obviously showed a lot last week when passed for 350 plus yards. Roma Dunze has arrived, gets Keenan Allen back. So I think there are a lot of factors. And it looks like they're going to give more touches to Roshan and not DeAndre Swift, who has just been downright terrible. So I think situationally, it looks pretty good. 5% projected ownership, $5,600 on DraftKings for Caleb Williams. I like it. I do like it. The model's lukewarm on that idea. But again, if you can find reasons to play guys, especially with high upside pass catchers, I don't mind it whatsoever.
And next question here from Chasing the Back to Back with, I think that's a Bengals player, ironically, as his profile picture. Says, "What do you think about Bowers this week?"
If they can stay on the field, he should have like 30 targets. So it's hard to argue with that, right? No Michael Mayer, no Devontae Adams. Just concerned about missing the tackle, general state of their offense. Should get a lot of work. It's just, it could be one of those games, Moose, where it's like, yes, he's in the perfect position to succeed from a target share standpoint, but the Raiders just cannot get anything going. That's my biggest fear. But there's also a chance he could score 30 points if they can stay on the field and they just pepper him with targets. So pick your poison there.
And it seems like the overarching theme of this entire week is like, this guy is highly owned. He should do well, but there's a shit ton of injuries where he could get zero.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Good,
Question
good.
here from,
I will say, just real quick, good week to pivot away from some of the higher owned guys with some of those question marks.
absolutely. Question here from Ed says, "Do you think Vele is going to be a healthy scratch again? The slot in Denver has been getting 7+ targets per week, so Vele Humphrey seems like a good, super cheap piece option." And Brian, I know you and I both had him in some high risk lineups last
Yeah, dude.
week, and we're scrambling 10 minutes before lock or whatever. But what do you think about him this week?
Yeah, out of nowhere. I mean, we were like the only people who actually cared about that, I think. But like, I was pretty shocked that he was inactive. And again, he was like 1% project ownership, so it's not like everyone was super high on Vele. I mean, I assume he'll be back this week. Like they gave him 7 targets in week 1 or 8 targets, whatever it was in week 1, and then he got hurt and then just didn't play last week. Maybe he wasn't fully back, or maybe they didn't feel comfortable with where he was with the game plan or what. I don't know. If he's active, Sean Payton loves loves Lil Jordan Humphrey more than we love anything in this world. So there's a chance they split reps again. I would say monitor warmups. If you want to keep that spot open, I don't mind it because, like you said, they have been using that. They've been funneling their targets there a lot. So especially, and again, if Sutton fails and they lock him down with the outside corners, it could be the inside guys that take off. So yeah, I think it's worth a look, and you have to monitor pregame and actives to see. I truly don't know. After last week, I can't actually project if Vela is going to be active or not.
Makes sense to me. We have a handful of questions here of people asking one player or the other. I do just want to ask if you could clarify: is that DFS season long? What type of contest you're playing, or what type of league you're in? We'll get back to it. So I see, like I said, Nigel, Scranton, handful of people say that. I see your questions, but if you could just clarify again, what's a contest type you're playing, what the format is, we'll definitely go ahead and get those questions answered. But are we caught up? Mr. Taurine says, out of Mooney, Lazard, and Wilson, who do you guys love as a cheap wide receiver option?
So I assume that's Johnny Wilson. If we just go straight by the model, because I don't have the brain power to project those guys in the middle of my head because they're so far down. So Johnny Wilson, DraftKings OF index of 26, Mooney 31, and the other one was who's the third option? Was
Lazard.
Wilson Mooney. Oh, Lazard.
Well,
It gives Mooney the edge, so we'll go Mooney based on the model.
okay, perfect. Let's see here. Jason says,
Actually,
so if this, oh, good.
I was just gonna say really quickly while we're on Johnny Wilson is a good pivot to Byron's question. Do you think Paris Campbell is in line for a high volume game with injuries to the Eagles wide receivers? So AJ Brown is out; he was downgraded. Devonta Smith is out. My boy Britton Covey is also out. So they're starting three guys that should not be starting. It's Jahan Dotson, it is Johnny Wilson, it is Paris Campbell. Dotson has like one target despite running 600 routes. Clearly, they're not looking to get him involved. Johnny Wilson, we've said this every time Johnny Wilson's name has come up, started training camp hot, has not had a positive comment in like 6 weeks. He's been on the field, not getting targets, more penalties than targets. Paris Campbell is a guy that the coach has talked up a lot. So out of the three, I think Paris Campbell might be the best option. Again, we're drawing thin here, but Hurts has to throw to someone. Maybe it's Goddard in his 40 targets. But I think I would choose Campbell just based on what we know about these guys and how the coaches have been treating them.
And I think you can take shots on stuff like that where, they're going to be in some contests, you'll be the only person owning them. And so at 3K, I don't hate it at all. Let's see. We have some more questions here. Jason says, so if this is the week Kelsey goes off, then do you fade Rashi Rice?
Or you play both and play Mahomes, right? You and I were talking about KC stacks before we went live.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. I know Chris talked about that in the plug. And I am trying to find my sheet. That's actually my highest ranked stack in my own personal rankings. So I'll probably see myself doing that as well. Let's see. Hawk Dark here says thoughts on Firemouth. He's ranking third in the model for 3 entry max on DraftKings.
Yeah, I like it. This sounds inconsequential, but it is an Arthur Smith offense, and their tight end 3 is out, which means that is less snaps they can fuck around and use their tight end 3 for. So that's more snaps for Firemouth, more snaps for Darnell Washington. I like it as a result. Firemouth, the model's picking up on it a little bit. 5% ownership, certainly like it. $3,900. So yeah, I think he's in play.
Nigel says if you were playing a cheap tight end this week and wanted to target the Arizona backups, which one? For did he say which site? But yeah, in general.
Yeah, so Elijah Higgins is going to be the guy. They're pretty excited about him. I think he had 4 targets last week or the last couple of weeks, and yeah, he's the guy. And I don't say he's not a tight end on FanDuel, so obviously you don't want to play him at wide receiver, but on tight end sites where Elijah Higgins is a tight end, super cheap, nice option.
Yep. And Gilberto Rodriguez says Arizona versus Washington and Cincinnati versus Carolina. Staking these games for good strategy this week. Are those any of game stacks on your radar, Brian?
Yeah, I know Chris wrote up Arizona and Washington in the plug, talked about it in his video, which again, if you guys are playing DFS this weekend and you haven't watched Chris's video on our channel, he is our NFL manager. I went through a lot of the top plays and strategies. Free video here. I still have plenty of time to digest before tomorrow's game, so make sure you check that out after our live stream here. Yeah, I think that's one of the top ones. And then Cincy and Carolina certainly has some merits as one of the higher total games on the board. Carolina's dealing with potentially 2 injuries to their best offensive linemen, so that has me a little shaky after Dalton's big performance last week. But it's certainly in play. Certainly in play, especially I think the Cincinnati side.
I think so too, and I think that's Brian the perfect game to take a piece back on it. We're starting to get to the point where pricing is a little bit better, and you can start doing some bringbacks. I can see myself bringing somebody back from Carolina in the game.
Yep, true. Yeah, Deontay is going to be extremely popular. Chuba's in a great matchup, and then some value in the other receivers on Carolina with Adam Thielen out.
Definitely. Jose Morales says DK early contest, Nico Collins or Jamar Chase. Staying on that
So Nico,
Cincinnati question.
yeah, Nico's number 2 in the model. Chase is number 6, and Chase is about half the ownership. We just talked about Cincinnati game, so I think I would go Chase for the ownership leverage there.
Okay. And EGS says, what's your thoughts on Tyler Huntley fantasy value on Monday night?
Yeah, my brain hasn't even got to Monday night yet, but if you're in desperate need of a quarterback, at least he can run some in season long. I'm curious to see what Mike McDaniel does there. Obviously, it hasn't looked great with any quarterback not named Tua under center. Does he change the offense up and run this kind of run heavy scheme with Tyler Huntley, read options, things like that, or does he ask Tyler Huntley to run his offense? I feel like that's most likely, and that kind of takes a lot of the fantasy value out of Huntley. But if he's remotely competent, he has Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to throw to. So, again, if it's DFS related, I'll dive into that tomorrow night as we project ownership and get the video ready for Monday with Jack. But I think it has a chance. There are some bad quarterbacks playing. At least Huntley can make something happen with his legs.
I think so too. And Scranton Steve says Terry McLaurin or Chris Olave for a season long full PPR.
Yeah, so Olave had that hamstring tweak in practice, but did fly with the team, which is a great sign, obviously. If he didn't, that'd be a really bad sign. But they also didn't elevate any wide receivers from the practice squad, despite Cedric Wilson, their other receiver, also being banged up. So all this makes me think Olave is good to go. I think raw projections would probably have, it's probably close, but I think I would give the edge to Olave, just raw projections. But you look at the situation, the game environment that Washington will be in, and just in the back of your mind, Olave could tweak something. I think you got to give the edge to McLaurin.
Yeah, and I'm looking here over on Twitter, and Jeremy Fowler about an hour ago said he's considered a game time decision. There's some optimism, but they need to monitor leading up to kickoff. So just keep an eye out, whichever way you decide to pick. Let's see. Up next here from DV Severe, full PPR pick 2. Worthy, Braylon Allen, Brian Thomas, or Josh Downs. I feel like that was a question we answered earlier.
That was the same one. He got the names right this time, and he's replaced
okay.
Xavier Worthy with Bucky Allen. So I will still say the same answer: Brian Thomas and Braylon Allen.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought that sounded similar. And Notam in the chat just says John Ross. So do you have any thoughts about John Ross?
Called up from the practice squad for the Eagles. He can't be any worse than Johnny Wilson or John Dotson has been so far. So he'll play. That's all the words I got about former first-round pick John Ross. And anytime someone calls a player a former first-round pick, it means that is the highlight of their career. So not really good things for John Ross to be said.
Question here from Ed says DK high risk flex spot, 4,100 left. Do I take a shot with Coach Speak Roshan Johnson or go with the higher risk Yoshibas? And Brian, we were talking earlier in some other chats as well with Roshan, more in season long and some waiver stuff. But what's your thoughts about Roshan, and do you like him this week?
Yeah, I'm looking. Our model absolutely despises Roshan Johnson this week, which is pretty funny. Roshan, we have and again, it's not like the industry's playing him either, right? The Coach Speak hasn't leaked into ownership projections, so I think at 1%, I will take that shot all day on Roshan and hope that the contextual, subjective factors play in Roshan's favor. Yosivas, he's not on our overperforming wide receiver list because they're actually been targeting him around the goal line, but I assume he won't score a touchdown every single freaking week of the year. And Yoshi, let's see, his ownership also just 2%. I say let's play the angle with Roshan. I would go there, especially by the way, Moose. We've talked about this many times, and Chris has talked about it in his videos in the plug. running back flex has been the way to go so far in 2024 NFL because of the state of the game. So I think use that as a tiebreaker whenever needed.
Oh, absolutely. And Mr. Tareen says, "Thank you, fellas. I super different for playing Jefferson slash Jones? I think Jets nuke and Jones in return game."
Nah, man. Jefferson up against two backup corners. I will do that every single time.
And I had to take the hat off. It was getting a little too annoying with the headphones on too. So ignore my hair if it's a little messy. uh, and Giano says, "Jester, where'd you get that hat?" We're both jesters
Dog.
here, so if you can figure out which one, I got mine from golf course.
If you're asking 1v1 questions, please tell us the site and the scoring system. And if you're asking which hats, please tell us which person you're asking about. Mine is Travis Matthew. A big fan of this hat brand. Will they sponsor us? No. Should they? Yeah, of course. Really good hats. So that's where I got mine from. And most yours from
Cool.
which golf course you're from?
The Arizona Biltmore last time we were out in for one of the DraftKings live finals.
Very fancy. Very nice.
Definitely. And How to Win says biggest fade in FanDuel main slates.
If we look at ownership, let's see here.
I actually
I
have a
haven't built lineup yet.
pretty cool.
What are you gonna say, Moose?
I was to say, we talked about Cincinnati essentially winning in a big game. There's that high total game. Deontay Johnson at 30% over on FanDuel seems way too high for me. Um, that's someone that I would probably be less than the field on.
Yeah, and he's also dealing with a little tweak of his own. Not saying it's going to impact him, but it could. And remember, Carolina's without their two top guards more than likely. At least one is out. The other one's very questionable. So if you're looking for a reason to fade a high-owned guy, that's the one. But just know he is fifth in the model, projected for like 1 billion targets. Could absolutely bury you at that ownership. So it is a very risky fade.
Yeah. DV Swerve again says 4 PPR, pick 3. And he picked 4 and he says 4 people. So of those 4 people, Worthy, Cooper, Kirk, Shakir, which one wouldn't you play?
Worthy.
All right, works for me. And Chris Ryder says season long PPR, Williams, Reed, or Higgins.
How does it feel to have an embarrassment of riches? That is a great question to have. Jameson, let's see, around that amount of points. Who's the other ones we got? We got Jaden Reed. I think you gotta like Jaden Reed with Jordan Love back. And yeah, that'll be my answer, Jaden Reed.
Hawk Dark here says Akers is ranking good in the model and low ownership. It's hard to trust him at a good matchup for DK3 entry max.
Yeah, this is going to be one we monitor because Joe Mixon is technically questionable. Didn't practice for like 2 weeks, then got in a limited practice on Friday, and that is generally not enough for most players to recondition and get back into the game plan and get back into playing shape. But there was really positive reports around Mixon, but then they called up a running back this week that they called up last week when Mixon was out, sort of indicating that Mixon wouldn't be ready. But even some of the beat reporters were like, maybe that's insurance. Mixon's going to test it out pregame. I still don't think Mixon plays. Let's monitor. We'll get an overnight report, right? It'll be Schefter or Rappaport or whoever else, and it'll be Mason's probably going to play or it's game time decision, whatever. If he's out, Akers, anytime a running back is top 3 in our model at sub 5% ownership, it should cause you to sit up in your chair and be like, I should really heavily consider this guy. Akers going to get all the early down work, the goal line work, and burn some people last week despite scoring that late touchdown. He's a really good play if Joe Mixon is out, and only if Joe Mixon is out.
Exactly. And good question here that I like from Byron. He says DFS on DraftKings, Mike Evans pivot to Godwin's ownership. And Brian, that whole team I haven't really gotten right. Seems like I pick one, the other scores 40. I pick that one the next week, and the other one scores 40 or so. So definitely a wide range in ownership for roughly similar price and roughly similar OF index. What's your thought on that wide receiver field there?
Yeah, DraftKings algorithm subscribing to the preseason ADP matters more than early season results because Godwin has outproduced Evans by far the last couple of games, and he's still lower price than Evans. That's a result. He's higher owned. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on with Evans, but I think you got to take a shot anytime you see a bigger discrepancy like that between teammates who are generally roughly equal in value. So, yeah, I think it's a good call there.
And PvP, Naked says, I'm over the Yoshi experience. If I wasn't a Bengals fan, I probably would be too.
Yeah, me
But
too. I mean, he's been destroying everything. So yeah.
yeah, I have the Discord background on, so you can't see it. But literally, like right there, there's a Yoshi stuffy, and not a shot at Yoshi Boss. Can't beat the Bay says Noah Brown dart throw for DK. What do you think?
Snaps have been increasing a little bit since he was activated after week 1. Jamison Crowder doesn't sound important, but did run 6 or 10 routes last week. That opens up a couple more. So, yeah, I think there are worse things in the world. If you're looking for a Curtis Samuel piece in that game stack, Noah Brown could be that guy.
And PvP says, is it fine to run 3 running backs in my cash game DK lineup, like Mason, B. Rob, and Hubbard?
I think you should probably try to get 3 running backs in this state of the NFL. So, yeah, I think that's a very fine idea.
And a question I like here from the Prince, it says, is it best to find fan value on FanDuel first or later when building?
I think first, because you got to know who people are going to be playing, right? And you got to know where the ownership and how builds are going to happen. If you know that this cheap receiver or this cheap running back or this cheap tight end is where people are going to go, you know how most builds are going to look. So you find the value and then you build accordingly. That's why I like using the lineup builder, right? And I don't want to pitch it as something everyone needs, but I think for a question like this, it's great because you put in your rules and you build a lineup and it'll tell you, oh, the optimal way is to not use that value or to use this value. So it's really tough hand building. Like the human mind's hard to grasp out. Okay, these are the guys, but now what do I do next? So I think to answer your question, you find it first, and then figure out if you want to play that value or pivot to different values or build more balanced.
Yeah, when you speak of the lineup builder, that's one of the first things that I do too. Where even if I may not always just build, 300 lineups, maybe I just build 10 or 20 and just say, hey, here's a guy I think might be some value. What are some random combinations that I can get out of it? And if it's like, oh, these first 20 that are spit out are super gross, maybe he's actually not that much
Yeah,
of a value, and go from there.
exactly.
So I agree with you too that finding it first is better. And Notum says we're wearing hats indoors. It's
Hey
actually a
man,
little cold in
this
here,
is this
so
is
we got to do what we got
this
to
is
do.
the nah, dude. This is the I need a haircut badly. Had it on the stream with Jake last night. It's going to continue that way until I get a haircut. So indoor hat bros, we are.
Yes. Ed says time for the weekly best player to perform the worst and worst player to perform the best.
The worst player to perform the best is Travis Kelsey. um, Yeah. I'll say Cortland Sutton. Obviously, we'll go with the underperforming wide receiver brand in that most. And I think you said Deontay Johnson best to perform the worst. Again, that's extremely scary, but I do get it. So, you have any other answers for that question?
Let me look. No, but it'll lead into which wide receiver will score a touchdown
Fair.
for us, which he's absolutely the worst player on the slate, and you should not play him in any contest, but he will score a touchdown.
Yeah.
And with that reminds me, so we're here. We've been here for about 40 minutes. We're here for another 5 more minutes at 9:45 Eastern time until we get up out of here. Scranton Steve says, "Do you think Najee Harris is going to let us down this week? Seems to be in a good spot this week."
You could not ask for a better spot. Jalen Warren's out. Opposing defense dealing with injuries, but somehow we're gonna get fucked by Cordell Patterson. That's just what it's gonna happen. It's Arthur Smith. Cordell Patterson game. All that being said, Najee's in a great spot. So, um, just look at all the factors. He looks like a great spot. Just also know that Arthur Smith in these spots has destroyed people and their souls in the past. Do with that information what you will.
And Leo here says, "Does Cliff Kingsbury factor in the Cardinals versus Commanders matchup?"
I don't know. I don't know how that works. I mean, sure, maybe. I don't know. I never know how coaches going back to old teams matters or factors. We don't know the answers. So, um, all I know is he's still running his horizontal rate on both teams. So that's about all the information I got there.
That's And Byron says, "What's your favorite low-owned QB stack this week for DFS?"
Who's I think it's got to be Mahomes, 4%, Kelsey 2%. Chargers missing Joey Bosa and Derwin James, and they're missing offensive lineman, and Herbert's banged up. Kansas City could have the ball for like 30 minutes in this game, 40 minutes in this game, 50 minutes in this game. That's
Yeah, I think it's one
extreme.
of those. I think it's one of those games where it's like, oh yeah, Kelsey's kind of trash, but he still could be good. Rashee Rice is doing really good, but only him. Oh no, who else is Mahomes going to throw to? It's one of the things like quit thinking so much. Just play the good plays, stack them, and if they go blow up, then you're shooting at the leaderboard.
Yeah, and again, they're expensive, so no one's really going to want to play them. But we have enough value to make it work. So I'll say that's the answer. Can't say. Mimu's been working on that here for the last hour, so I'm gonna continue with that theme.
And speaking of value, towards the end of the show, we always have a little game you and I play. We take a look at which cheap, low-owned wide receivers are going to score a touchdown, and the criteria for this is less than $5,000 and under 10% on DraftKings. And Brian, I'm gonna start this one off because I saw it. Projected only to get a handful of targets, but for New Orleans, Mason Tipton has one of the highest DKOF index changes at only 3K, and he'll probably be less than 0% owned. That's going to be my pick to score a touchdown this week.
Dude, if Wilson's out or Cedric Wilson or Olave, that's a crazy good play. He's somehow who's Mason Tipton? Great question. No one knows. You don't know. He didn't even perform in preseason DFS. Yet he's somehow behind Olave and Shaheed on this team. So Mason Tipton, monitor inactive. If one of Wilson or Olave is out, a great play. A super sneaky showdown play for those of you who play the afternoon showdown slates as well. So Moose pulling that one. That's a crazy pool. I was gonna go way less crazy and say I think Trey Palmer is an option. He's 3K. Again, we're digging really deep here because Jalen McMillan is out, rookie receiver for Tampa Bay. Trey Palmer will be the number 3 receiver. No one's going to play him. He's interesting. And then an actual real answer of a real player that's going to play a lot of snaps that you should maybe play. Gabe Davis leads the model under these conditions. So we'll say Gabe Davis.
Yeah, and it's funny. I actually did this while you were talking. If you Google Mason Tipton, his little like Google bio AI generate whatever. It's him just catching touchdown passes and a TikTok of him running a 4.3. So don't let
Well,
him
we know
get
he's
open.
fast. Yeah.
Definitely. And so DV here says, I need a quarterback. I traded for Anthony Richardson, Brian Thomas, Braylon Allen, gave up Kenneth Walker. I already had Jonathan Taylor and Gibbs as my running backs. Was that a good trade?
I mean, if you get Walker for all those guys, that is the best trade in the world. So yes, fantastic trade.
So cool. So we're pretty much at our 9:45, our 45-minute point here. Brian, is there any last lingering thoughts, comments, concerns, or anything you wanted to talk about before I take us out of here?
Absolutely not. This is hour 14 of work today. No, I'm ready to get the fuck out. Let's I will say watch Chris's video, join our Discord server, check out our site, occupyfantasy.com. We talked about the daily plug, the model with ownership, and the lineup builder, all the tools you need to be successful in DFS. Go check those out after this video. Moose, give them the pitch to subscribe. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers, which is crazy to think about.
Yes, we're at 10,000 subscribers. We literally could not do this if it wasn't for you all. Again, that's free. If you like what you do, or if you like what we do, definitely go ahead and do that. We're not asking you to get any paid membership or anything like that. If you want to, that's great. We have more tools and product behind the paywall. But we also do have just these free videos, always here chatting up, talking with you as well. We do have our Discord at occupyfantasy.com/Discord. Learn how to be a member and join access to that. You can get access to all of us and our staff, talk to them live. Absolutely fantastic resource. And if you're a person who likes to watch games and chit chat with other people, it's also great for that as well. But until next time, Moose and Brian from occupyfantasy.com. Good luck. Have a good night.